What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 662 of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast, Hot Tags of the Week, live for some reason. I don't know, kind of on a whim decided to do that. I'm your host as always, Tony Mango, joined as always by Callum Wiggins.
Hello there.
Rob has not popped up yet, but he may pop up later. We're not sure exactly what's going on with that. Maybe he's like busy doing something, I don't know. But not the biggest week in pro wrestling history, not the craziest amount of hot tags for us to break down, but there are some things for us to talk about. So as always, we always want to know what you guys have to say too. For all the people that are listening, drop your thoughts in the comment section below. If you do end up popping up live for us, then obviously take advantage of the super chats, chat it up live on the stream here. But you know, if you're listening to this after the fact, then also make sure that you do the same things that you normally do on YouTube. Hit the like button, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, ring that notification bell for any random lives that we do like this in the future. We got a live that we will most likely be doing next week, or actually, no, it's not next week. It's no, it's not next week. All In is 2 weeks from now, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks from now, when we got the AEW All In pay-per-view point and all that, we got Bash in Berlin coming to right after that, and NXT No Mercy, then All Out, and you know, before we know it, it's Bad Blood and Wrestle Dream and 2038. It just kind of keeps surprising us like that. But you know, sometimes randomly a little live like this can be kind of fun and stuff. So make sure that you have that set up and all that. Also, if you want to help us out on the monetary side of things, best way to keep us alive here and on the website and Fanboys Anonymous and anything else under a mango tree is to support through the Patreon or the YouTube channel membership. So subscribe to even the $1 tier or the $5, the $10 Darkcast tier or the Pick a Poison tier. All of it's greatly appreciated. And the same goes to the Redbubble and TeePublic merchandise options. And join our Discord. It's another way for you to chat it up about everything. If you're not on Facebook or Twitter, or for some reason not going to the page, or on smarkoutmoment.com or YouTube or anything like that, there's a million different ways for you to leave your comments, and Discord's just one of the easy ones to chat it up if you like that service. So hot tag wise, we got a couple things, as we mentioned before, that we will be breaking down here. I might be forgetting some things that have happened in the past week or so. Ashton popping up in the chat. What's up, Ashton? And, you know, if we did, by all means, let us know that we're forgetting something or whatever. But one of the major topics, of course, going on, actually, the news broke not that long ago, a couple hours ago. Kevin Sullivan passed away. And naturally, we always say the same things here. Our condolences go out to the friends and family and fans of Kevin Sullivan. And that sparks the discussions that we always have of, you know, favorite matches or memories or career assessments. We're not going to really do like a full on superstar scores or anything along those lines, unless of course you'd end up doing the Pick a Poison. Yeah, that's always an option. But I will never pretend to be a huge fan of somebody when they've passed away, when I am not as familiar with their work. You know, I would have a million things to say if, unfortunately, if and when we end up having a podcast about, like, you know, Bret Hart or you know, the Shawn Michaels or like any of those people that I grew up watching and stuff. Kevin Sullivan is not somebody that I am as familiar with. I have not gone back and checked out much of his work in the past. I was not as big of a WCW fan when he was more prominently featured. I was always more of a WWF guy anyway, even, you know, late 90s when I was really, really watching that. But I never really grew an appreciation for the little bits and pieces of what I had seen of Kevin Sullivan. Although I recognize that he is somebody that is very influential and, you know, has his mark in pro wrestling history and stuff. How do you kind of view Kevin Sullivan? Are you more familiar with his stuff? Do you like anything in particular? Do you have any kind of go-to memories or thoughts when it comes to Kevin Sullivan?
I mean, not especially, no, because as I don't go back and watch a lot of old school wrestling history either. So the heyday of Kevin Sullivan was way before I began watching and took a real interest. I know that at the very least that he's kind of one of the forebearers of the more occultist type characters in pro wrestling history. So bring up like his Prince of Darkness gimmick and those Games Master stuff, Great Wizard. Like, so he would have, I guess, like modern day equivalents would be stuff like your Bray Wyatts, your Undertakers, Kanes. Let's say they're more like, you know, actual supernatural, where he was just a, you know, a cult leader that didn't really, I mean, leaned a little bit towards supernatural, especially when we get to talk about like his WCW stuff. But when he was more of a like just cerebral, almost like a Charlie Manson type character, and then going into, but then he goes from that to, then he moves into gym promotions, and then he's part of the Varsity Club, where he's essentially just like a giant, like a jock, essentially, with Mike Rotunda and Rick Steiner. So, but then I guess the biggest memories that I have of him of basically WCW, but that's primarily because like Dungeon of Doom,
right?
And that stuff was just the worst. Like, it was the worst example of like just bringing Hulk Hogan in and saying, okay, we need to give him a giant group of over-the-top, mostly giant villains to him to slay, and doing all those like really crappy segments with Sullivan on the throne, and he's then surrounding in a giant like ice cave with the E.T. and the Giant and Kamala and Barbarian. It's like, yeah, it wasn't exactly cutting edge television at that point. And then, you know, Sullivan just was the ringleader for that, but that was towards the back end of his career anyway. I mean, that was like the Dungeon of Doom was going from like 94 to about 95, 96, and then he retired in 97 from in-ring competition. So, and yeah, I guess the only other thing that I can really bring up from like his history is the fact that he was married to Nancy Sullivan, woman who would eventually become
I had to.
who'd eventually become Nancy Benoit, and obviously we know what happens from there. And I'm sure all those people have made already stupid memes and jokes. I've seen plenty of stuff on Twitter about how, oh, it's a great main event in hell tonight, and because it's just like that's Benoit's managed to drag him down there. But I think that, yeah, it's just it's honestly a shame when someone of that level of influence on rest history passes away. And then he was like one of the last like bookers of WCW prior to its demise as well. So yeah, as I say, I can't really tell you to seek out any particular matches or anything I know of particular. I mean, if you want to just imagine that if you've got quite a low opinion of how wrestling appears these days, and you want to try and boost up this compared to stuff in the past, and I would say check out some of the Dungeon of Doom skits. It's like, oh, it could be a lot worse.
The Dungeon of Doom is one of those things that, like, that's one of the first things I think of when it comes to Kevin Sullivan. But with that being said, that's not, again, something that I'm like, I couldn't name you the people that were in the Dungeon of Doom other than like the Giant, and I think Kamala was a part of it, the Zodiac. Like, you know, there's some like tangential history that I'm aware of, but I never really watched much of that. And the little bits and pieces that I had seen, I remember way back in the day, because I was like early 90s. It was like 93 or so, right? Something around that, like 90, 94 maybe. I didn't like that stuff back then, because to me, I was very much, I guess, partially indoctrinated, maybe not necessarily 100%, but the idea in mind of like WCW has all the old people in there, and like I had seen already the Earthquake, aka the Shark, or Meng. I had seen Haku already, and I had seen the Barbarian, and I had seen, I'm looking at the list now, like One Man Gang, Kamala. Yeah, like there are guys that I had already seen at their like peak, and bringing them in and making them just sort of this kind of goofy stable, it didn't work for me. So Sullivan was always, in a way, kind of presented to me like not necessarily as a we got Rob on the line now. We are live, and Rob is here. Right, Rob is somewhat here. Can't really hear him too well. He's in the process of getting sorted out.
You hear me? Yeah.
Somewhat. We can hear you moving around at least.
He's been dragged somewhere as well. Yeah.
He's coming back from the Dungeon of Doom.
Yeah. I am not, but if I am, boy, that was a task that I mastered.
We are currently talking about R.I.P. Kevin Sullivan. You got any like specific memories or thoughts process about his career?
I probably have the most experience watching Sullivan stuff out of the three of us. I think he was a tremendous performer as, in the Florida territory with his kind of heelish stable of, the Purple Haze, has how like woman, Nancy Benoit got involved in wrestling. I, of course, did enjoy his stuff in WCW. Minus the camp of Dungeon of Doom, I think he was one of the best overall performers when it came to a certain style. He also really helped book the Nitro era, the NWO era. So I think Sullivan's one of the most pivotal figures in wrestling of that era, even if he doesn't get as much credit today as he once did.
I'm seeing that we might be having some audio issues. If anybody live is listening to this and hears any kind of an echo or something, let me know. It might be an OBS thing, might be a Skype thing, might be both. I don't know for sure. Or it might be nothing. I don't know. If that ends up being the case for the post editing of this, I can't edit it after the fact. So sorry about that if that is the case. But yeah, shit happens. If you guys had a one more match concept for Kevin Sullivan, could be AEW, could be WWE, could be gimmick match, tag team match, whatever it might be. Any kind of gimmick idea, any kind of an opponent, something along those lines?
I'd say if you're looking at from a WWE perspective, the one that is most aligned to his character. I mean, you could look at Uncle Helmy and that stuff going on right now, but I'd say probably the one that would have the better match is Damian Priest. And then from an AEW perspective, you're looking at Malachi Black, probably. They're the ones that probably have, if you're going something that has gimmicks akin to what Sullivan was doing.
I like the Damian Priest idea. I didn't think about that. I was thinking Karrion Kross, because the last time he appeared on TV was in a Karrion Kross vignette, where it was claimed that, Kross had worked with him in the past, and it was sort of like a mentor-mentee kind of relationship. So I was thinking Karrion Kross, WWE. AEW, I think sounds right. You have to look at Malachi Black and probably do that.
My first thought process was just book him in some sort of a death match thing with Moxley. But that's not necessarily his style, so I kind of like your ideas better than the one that I first thought of. But again, I can't speak to being like the biggest Kevin Sullivan fan out there to have the most well-rounded concept of everything that he's had in his career and kind of do the equivalent of like the Blueprint Project or something like that I've got when it comes to other things. I can't do that with Kevin Sullivan's career. So in any case, when it comes to Kevin Sullivan, we will probably be seeing a video package tonight on SmackDown, which it's been advertised as quite a bland episode. They have advertised Cody will be there, and Roman will be there. And I don't think any matches. I think that they had said like LA Knight will be there and somebody else will be there. Let me double check to see if they've changed it in the meantime. Now they actually have added a couple matches. All right, so now it's going to be Andrade and Santos Escobar for number 1 contenders match for the U.S. title. Jade Cargill against Alba Fire, Street Profits against A-Town Down Under, and DIY against Pretty Deadly. All right, so they've changed it from the people will be there, go watch the show thing. But I'm sure we'll get a video package at some point, and they'll break down some of the highlights of his career and stuff. And if you have any fantasy booking ideas of what you would do with Kevin Sullivan, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let's move on to another thing here on our hot tag list, though. The Lucha Bros are more than likely at this point expected to be joining the WWE roster when their contracts for AEW expire. Lots of contract stuff this week, but a lot of it was sort of LA Knight re-signed a new contract, and the other handfuls of people that had been like Bobby Lashley is still projected to leave WWE and his contract's expiring soon. Ricky Starks is still seeing interest in WWE whenever his contract is up, like that kind of thing. Not a whole lot of like tangibles that I had seen of so-and-so signed a new contract with blank or something, but the most tangible thing had been the Lucha Bros story. And we had talked about this idea that they could potentially be joining WWE before. I'm pretty sure we talked about that on like a couple weeks ago on the hot tags, but now it seems even more likely. And they've also trademarked a couple different things, variations of names that they might be able to use in WWE. There's Cero Miedo, Zero Miedo, Animo with 1 for the I, Fuego, King Fuego, and Rey Fuego. Obviously, I'm assuming Rey Fuego would be Rey Fenix's name and not Penta. What do you guys think about this idea that they could be popping up in the Raw and SmackDown rosters pretty soon and skipping NXT and going by any of these names or anything along those lines?
I think it's a massive blow to AEW if they lose a team like the Lucha Brothers. You know, the Lucha Brothers are kind of baked into the idea of the AEW style, and I think they're a great fit for AEW. And not that, you know, they wouldn't have fun in WWE or that there wouldn't be good matches, but I think it's mostly like a massive blow to the early identity of AEW. And that's what stands out to me the most. I think I'm more looking forward to Phoenix than I am Penta. I fear Penta would become more reliant on the catchphrase, and it's probably something that's just not for me personally, but I would just be happy to see them thriving in any environment.
Yeah, obviously it would be a blow to AEW to lose a tag team of that caliber, and as Rob says, they're part of like the initial fabric of the promotion, like one of the earliest teams that was signed to AEW when they were still like part of AAA as well as being part of AEW. But like in the grand scheme of things, they've only had, I think, only 4 tag team matches this year. So it's not like that they're fixtures on every single week. And yeah, so Death Triangle, they've had matches like the match they had at All Out 2021 Young Bucks, his second best tag team match in AEW history. It's up there in contention with the Omega and Page versus the Bucks match and the FTR versus Bullet Club Gold tag match. But I think that they are, as like, it's supremely popular. And say we want about Penta, but in terms of like his output, but he's so charismatic that the audience gets on board with everything that he does. I mean, I would say out of the two of them, considering if they were to both go to WWE, if they were singles acts or treated as singles acts, I'd say Penta has the higher ceiling than Phoenix does.
Really?
Well, Penta's just a character. He fits more into the WWE style of, we don't actually care about wrestling, we just want characters that do stuff. And I think the Penta fits more into that because he'll get crowd reactions by doing the Cero Miedo, whereas Phoenix can only get those reactions by wrestling.
Yeah, he definitely fits that catchphrase, you know, that yeet Yeah, kind of mold. I agree there.
Yeah, because essentially, well, to look at what Phoenix will be like in WWE, just look at what Dragon Lee's doing right now. That's essentially what Phoenix will be in WWE. Like, I can envision, not to sound petty or anything like that, but I can envision a world where he's more often seen on Speed than on WWE program, an actual main WWE programming. But yeah, as we know that they are super talented, they'll be utilised as a tag team. I don't know if they'll go through NXT first if they do end up signing. I imagine that might be the case because NXT is, they're going to be on any networks. They'll probably want to make a splash with some big names appearing on there before they eventually move up to the main roster. So yeah, it feels like it's a pretty much full conclusion now. So just kind of counting down the days until they move over.
I think if that ends up being true, which of course, you got to take everything with a grain of salt, that they would even go to WWE, let alone how and when and, all the kind of factors that go along with that. I think it makes perfect sense for them to skip NXT since it's not like they are brand new. They don't know the WWE style necessarily, but they don't necessarily have to either, since they are veterans that have been around for a long time. Penta's, I believe, 40, and Phoenix is something like 33, 34, something along those lines. And they're established enough names that if we were to spend time with them in NXT, that's already killing a lot of the potential for them to be on the main roster for many years in the future. I mean, even if it's like, a couple of months, it might end up having like a big enough factor that you just don't get around to doing certain feuds. And I could see, I put up a thing about this on EWN of what would you like to see them go, Raw or SmackDown? I would rather put them on Raw. I think that if you put them on SmackDown, there's already a ceiling that they can't reach the tag titles anytime soon, since it's pretty clear, at least for me, maybe I'm wrong, that the Bloodline's going to hold those and feud with the Usos. And that's, the next couple of months leading up to WrestleMania. So if the Lucha Bros are popping up anytime relatively soon, I wouldn't bother to put them there. They could have matches with good people, DIY against them. Sure, I'd like to see that. And they could work well with the Street Profits and Pretty Deadly and all the other kind of variations of what the tag teams are that they have there. But they also have good options on Raw. And I think one of the things that they would need to sort of figure out is, do they end up going into the LWO? Do they end up feuding with the LWO? Do they end up staying completely away from them, like how Legado del Fantasma is on the opposite brand now? Because I would be down potentially for the idea that they come in post Judgment Day split and we get like Dom, Carlito, and those two as a faction to feud with the LWO, more so than they just get thrown into the LWO and now the group has way too many people to do anything with. They don't have to have any kind of connection whatsoever, but I'd like to see Pentagon versus Rey and Rey Mysterio, and Phoenix versus Rey Mysterio, and those two against Dragon Lee and all that, rather than them teaming with them more so. But I'm down for them to join. I don't dislike the name Rey Fuego if they go with that. If they go with Cero Miedo, you know how I feel about that already. I don't like the whole do that a million times during a match thing.
I think one element that you're missing when you're saying that they're capable of just going straight to the main roster is NXT is going to be on CW. It does need some extra fire behind it for a little bit. So maybe a short stop at NXT for them, and maybe they're up by the Royal Rumble or Mania. But I think that there could be a stop worthwhile in NXT for them, and then they can go. And for the record, I would like them far away from the LWO.
I guess we're gonna figure out in the course of the next. Actually, do we know when their contract is up?
Not off the top of my head that I can say.
I don't think I had come across an actual date for it. But you would assume if it's, in the imminent future that they don't have some kind of... It shouldn't be that much more past 90 days if they're already kind of expired. Because they haven't been on AEW TV for at least a little bit, right? I don't remember their last match off the top of my head, but I don't remember them really having any kind of like prominent spots or anything in the past few weeks. Double check about that too. So their last AEW match for Phoenix was July 20th against Tony Nese on Collision. So maybe it's not any time super soon that we'll be seeing them pop up. But Lucha Bros wrestled July 17th on Rampage as well. They beat Private Party. So guess we're probably gonna have to wait a little bit, but we'll find out soon enough. And we'll also find out what AEW is doing with their trademark of Meat Mayhem that they had just trademarked this week. Kind of doubling down a little bit more on the big meaty men slapping meat thing that has taken on a couple different matches here and there. Meat Mayhem is something that we have seen before, so that's not like a brand new concept that we have to try to figure out what this is. But if they're trademarking that, they have probably some plans in the future to do some more of those similar types of matches and book something maybe at All In. I mean, you don't have to, but it's a possibility.
They never actually did the Meat Mayhem match, did they?
No, that was supposed to happen at
Revolution.
Yeah, but then certain injuries occurred that prevented that from happening.
We got a lot of people that could be in a Meat Mayhem match that aren't necessarily booked for the card, but we don't know who's going to be in that Casino Gauntlet match either, so that might end up, factoring in there. But, the Beast Mortos could be in a Meat Mayhem match. We've got a lot of, Lance Archer types, Brian Cage. And since you're going to All In, if there was a Meat Mayhem match, who would you like to see in that, Callum?
I wouldn't want to see the match. So that's because I want there should only be Casino Gauntlet match is the one where you have lots of people appearing in it. Because imagine like Meat Mayhem would be something like Wardlow and Miro's not going to be on it. Hobbs isn't going to be in it. Killswitch is already in the trios. Will be in the trio title match.
Mm-hmm.
So realistically, they're who are you going to put it? Brian Cage,
Brody King. You got
Brody King might be in the trio match.
Yeah, technically he might be. They could win that match.
And then you got EJ Induka. If they decide to put him on that one, you got Wardlow, who is AWOL as well, probably going to go to WWE as well. But I don't think they have the roster for Meat Mayhem, at least on this particular show. I think they'll need to save it for another time.
Because Meat Mayhem could be Grand Slam.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know if it's a particular just match, or whether it's just could be a YouTube series or something like that.
It could just be protecting some IP that they figured maybe they should own the name for that in case they want to use it a year from now.
Yeah, so as I don't anticipate that match happening at All In if it is a match type moving forward.
Taking a look at some of the other hot tags we got going on here. Let's stick around with AEW and talk about this topic that we talked about it last week, this Britt Baker and MJF thing. Well, now, according to Konnan, the Britt Baker backstage drama could also potentially apply to Cody Rhodes, with something about Britt and Brandi Rhodes not getting along, and that could have led to Cody wanting to leave because Tony Khan, quote unquote, always takes Britt Baker's side. Of course, we have no idea if there's any validity to this whatsoever. We have not ever been behind the scenes in any capacity. That's all, hearsay, speculation, allegation, blah, 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 yada, 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 all that kind of crap. But I never got that kind of a feeling from anything that I've ever seen of like Cody talking about why he left AEW and hinting at certain things. Never gave me the impression whatsoever that it could have been heat with somebody in particular, especially not like my wife has heat with Britt Baker kind of a thing. But you never know. It's, people get into arguments all the time at different workplaces, and just because they work together doesn't mean that they have to like each other. And lots of people seem to have issues, when it comes to AEW or WWE backstage, and we don't hear about it, and sometimes we do. So it's an interesting story one way or another. I don't put a whole lot of stock into it unless we start hearing more, because it does kind of seem to me like Konnan talks a lot about a lot of things that I don't remember hearing any kind of validation behind. What do you guys think about this whole idea? Do you think there's any potential truth to this, or just kind of saying something for the sake of getting in the news cycle?
I think it could be the latter, but at the same time, it seems so random for him to say this in particular that it is, honestly, you saying that was the first I've heard of it, but it's just a little silly to think about, but stranger things have occurred. Like you said, we're not back there, we don't know, and it does seem like for whatever it is, people just kind of something of them go down, and we're like, I want to move on from it. So maybe who knows? Maybe the instance like this happened in the past. I really couldn't say.
I mean, Konnan wouldn't have any reason to make this up.
Like, that's my thing. It's like,
of course he would, because he hates Tony Khan with a passion, and he's always like just stirring shit. So he's probably heard one thing, which is probably, maybe Britt Baker and Brandi Rhodes had an argument at some stage backstage, and he's basically Britt Baker's always stirring up trouble behind the scenes, and she's Tony Khan's favourite, of course. That's so.
Wait. Okay, I'm being totally legit. I don't check out Konnan too much. Does he have a disdain towards Tony Khan?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why, like just Tony bringing that up, just the case, I might as well start like the guy in the fourth row at the latest, like WWE house show, what's going on in the wrestling business, than ask Konnan what's going on. Like he runs like probably in a lot of people's eyes the worst major promotion in the world right now in AAA, which is just an absolute shit show. And he's probably pissed that AEW doesn't have a strong relationship with AAA anymore because of all the things that are going on. That's why he's reveling in that the Lucha Bros are going to join WWE. And he probably wants to get into bed with WWE as well, because he's obviously not going to do stuff with AEW moving forward. And, he's just one of those, like, high-level grifters, like your Eric Bischoffs and your Dave Scherers and all the other things that just make money off of shitting on AEW. That's the grind these days. That's how you make money in wrestling. It's just on shitting on AEW.
And Dave Scherer, I know, doesn't like Tony Khan. Like that's a pretty strong grudge for whatever reason. But yeah, I guess with that being said, it's a lot easier to say, okay, then that's probably bullshit.
So even though we are live, I am going to experiment with this Skype call for a moment, because I am hearing that we've been having feedback. So I'm gonna restart my Skype call, but we're gonna stay on the air. I'm gonna call these guys back in a moment and see if maybe there's a better way to pull this off. If it doesn't, then we might end up switching the podcast off and calling it a day with that. But I'm going to try this out. I'm calling them back up now to see if this is any difference. Right when we're getting a siren in the background, too. This is one of those episodes, isn't it? Probably shouldn't have been a live episode, but you know what? Screw it. And I think that I've fixed the issue. At least I'm not seeing any kind of doubling up on their end right now.
Okay, I'm gonna hear myself. See if there's any.
I think it's fixed.
I think it's fixed as well. At least I hear myself normally.
Yeah, because it's there've been a lot of issues with OBS and Skype lately for multiple different reasons. That's just 2024 for you.
Yeah, Konnan making shit up. I just, like, it does feel weird that he would just comment on something like Britt Baker, but
could just be commenting on it because it's a news story. There's all these people with their podcasts that just talk about something completely unrelated to them because they know that that's in the cycle and that they can get picked up for a quote somewhere. And, that's kind of a vast majority of a lot of what the news websites are doing this past couple of years is just taking podcast quotes and making stories out of them. And if it's a sensational thing like that, a big story with backstage drama and gossip and one of the biggest stars that's out there, then you get your name out there, get some more clicks and stuff.
Hey, don't attack how I make money, thanks.
To be fair, you wouldn't want to keep it like that if you had the option, right?
Oh, this is correct. But what can I do?
So, I mean, maybe there's truth to it. Maybe there isn't. Maybe there's a nugget of truth. Maybe it's complete bullshit. I don't know. But I guess if there is truth, eventually it'll come out. And in the future, we'll hear some kind of big blow up
more and more, honestly, I'm beginning to think we might never know the official ins and outs of why Cody left. There is an NDA in place. I don't think that's ever getting broken unless it's 30 some odd years from now. But that's been a pretty tight-lipped secret.
My thought process lately with that has been the NDA is probably there so that he doesn't spill any secrets of the company. Because you got to imagine Cody's not, signing the same type of paperwork as Shad Khan is, but he had to know some backstage numbers and, I'm sure there's spreadsheets that he saw with information about people and whatever. So I kind of think the NDA thing would be more you shouldn't be able to reveal how our pay structure is for different people with that tier system thing and how we operate our business type stuff, and less so about whatever the reasons were that he left, because I don't think that that's necessarily, I mean, I could be completely wrong about this too. It's just me as a fan speculating based off of interviews and stuff. It doesn't strike me that there's some major blow up like the CM Punk thing where we can point at that and go, okay, Punk had issues with these people like the Young Bucks and Jack Perry and Hangman Page and all, and here's a fight backstage and here's this incident and here's that fight and here's that kind of thing. Those NDAs I think are more so to protect from lawsuit type stuff. The Cody thing, I just sort of think that he probably was look, this isn't the way I want this company to go, and it's not going to be something that I get to steer the way that I want. And I always wanted to be the WWE champion anyway, and I've boosted my stock and my value, and they want me, and I just kind of want to go back to where that was. But maybe there is something more to it. Maybe it's not the reason why he left. Maybe it's just one of the things that, if you had a laundry list, could be on there, or Konnan could be completely talking out of his ass. I think if there is a story to it, we'll hear about it someday. Whether that is Baker going, that's complete bullshit, and here's the actual reason, or if it's, well, the reason why I had this issue with her is because she was such a bitch and, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. But it's an interesting topic that could potentially, if it is true, point toward Britt Baker being somebody that you might need to pay a little bit more attention to for future issues with other people if it's going to continue with Alicia had tout and MJF, and if it had the whole thing with Brandi and Cody, and Adam Cole gets back into the mix with there too, because there was that whole thing before about him moving and people thinking that they had split up and all that other kind of crap. High school drama never ends, everybody. For those who thinks that that is like you graduated and everybody becomes an adult, no, it doesn't. So keep that in mind. But at least as far as other backstage things go, there's a thing about Seth Rollins being written off television this week, and this kind of gets into TV talk a little bit. But on the Monday Night Raw that we had seen, there was a segment where they ended up having CM Punk and Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins all kind of getting involved with each other, and Punk goes off to go fight McIntyre, and Bronson Reed, of all people, attacks Seth Rollins, and he hits him with, I believe it was like 7, might have been more, tsunamis. And they did this whole angle of him, like him being Rollins, clearly having like a blood capsule or something and spitting up blood, and then he might have internal bleeding and, you know, hemorrhaging or something. So I had taken that originally as Reed attacked Rollins because they needed some kind of an out for why Punk, McIntyre, and Rollins doesn't become a triple threat at Bash in Berlin, or at least by Bad Blood. Reed gets in there, starts a feud with Rollins, and we get Punk and McIntyre at Bash in Berlin, and we get Reed and Rollins, and then we just sort of have to forget about it. You know, it's enough of a distraction. But now it seems the case is they could have been doing that because Rollins has chronic injuries, according to Dave Meltzer, and that they want to write him off television for a little while again. If these injuries are chronic and they are bad enough that he had his issues heading into Mania and then needed to take time off, and it already is back to needing to take time off, I kind of want Rollins to just take a considerable amount of time off then and just be, you know, come back at Royal Rumble or something. Heal up, you know?
I think, well, I'll start with Reed first. My initial thought was, cool, they're coming full circle. The match had been promised to Reed for Chamber. They didn't get to it because, again, Rollins has been injured, but they're coming back around. And a lot of people seem to really be fond of the angle and the way that it presented Reed as a threat.
I thought it was cool.
So I thought that was a great, you know, way to get him into the mix. Now hearing that it might just be to write him off again, I also feel like, okay, maybe you just take whatever time you need. And I also just, it gets me down in the just general way of like, I don't like seeing a guy like this being forced to take so much time off, because, you know, we kind of saw this back in the day with Edge, where it was like, wow, he gets injured a lot, and then suddenly, yeah, I can never take another bump or I might die. And I'm not saying that Rollins' issues are that severe, but that's just the kind of vibe I get, where it's like, oh, he might be one of those people now who's just, you know, consistently hurt. But if that is the case, I hope he heals up quickly. If not, I think it's a good idea to make Reed more of a threat. At least give the experiment a try. If it fails, it fails. Rollins is Teflon at this point. He's always going to be a main event guy. But most importantly, I just hope he's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for like Rollins in terms of he's suffered with injuries for quite a while throughout his like latter stage of his career. He's obviously the big injury, which kind of was the catalyst for all this, was the huge knee injury he suffered during his first WWE title run. It's almost been, you know, he's had sustainable runs past that point, and there was like periods of time where he was kind of carrying the kind of company on his back a little bit for being available, but that's carrying the company on his back has seemingly injured his back to the point where he can't really do much anymore. And yeah, I'd say if he is suffering from chronic injuries, then there's realistically, there's certain ways that you can go about it. I say there might be like a big surgery or a big treatment that might be able to resolve all of that, but you imagine that if he was to go under surgery again, and that's months and months out of competition probably, especially if it's anything to relate to his back. And yeah, so I don't know whether they can, or they want to risk losing him for that long. With the Bronson Reed thing, I think it was a good angle they did on Raw, apart from Michael Cole's showcasing that. Like, I don't know why he has to like shout tsunami over and over and over again throughout the entire thing. He can't just like, talk like a regular human being for it. But I think that it was a good moment, but realistically, again, it depends on the extent of Rollins' injury and how long he's going to be out for. But it feels like, in some people's eyes, it's like, they've elevated Bronson Reed. In my mind, it's like, well, they've elevated him so he can lose to Seth Rollins. That's kind of my level of elevation for it. It's like, okay, they've made him a big deal, and he'll probably beat some lower level guys on the roster and go on a bit of a tear now. But then when Rollins comes back, Rollins is just there to beat Bronson Reed and then have whatever big match he's having at WrestleMania while Bronson Reed's probably in the Battle Royal.
Yeah, probably.
That's my long-term view of this point. I mean, it's not like Reed's arguably on the younger side for a lot of the WWE roster. He's only 35. So, side of obviously NXT, of course, but like, on the main roster, he's probably on the more middle to younger side of things. So it's like this could be the catalyst for a big run for him, but it's not like he's a heel. Breaker's a heel, so it's not like he's going after the Intercontinental title. I don't imagine he's going after Gunther in the world title either off the back of this. So realistically, this can only end in a match for Rollins, and out of the two of them, Rollins, despite being as banged up as he is the sustainable star out of those ones. So out of those two, like Rollins is going to have the big WrestleMania against whoever, probably Punk maybe, and Reed's not going to likely be involved in anything. So yeah, that's a good angle to set up what will be a big-ish match between him and Reed whenever that match can take place. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts of it for now. And obviously, hopefully, Rollins can get back to full fitness eventually, because that leaves that whole Punk, McIntyre, Rollins thing in just really up in the air right now.
Oh, but that's Triple H's favorite thing. You mean they don't have to touch, and you drag it out a few more months? That's kind of the specialty right now. By
necessity or by plotting, that does seem to apply to a lot of different feuds, doesn't it? It's almost like that's like the universe is basically just like, okay, that's how things work in WWE lately. If it's a good enough or big enough feud or whatever with certain people, do something, wait a couple months, do the next thing, wait a couple months, do the next thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and then you got people that bounce around and they do 100 different things at the same time too. Like, Pete Dunne's feuding with like 6 people at the moment, which is kind of crazy.
Basically, if you're a lower level guy and you're healthy, you're going to do like 100 different things. But if you're a top guy, and whether you're injured like Rollins or not like Roman, you're going to be kept very protected. Because if you think about it, Rollins, I think on pay-per-view this year, Rollins has only had 3 matches, right? And 2 of them occurred WrestleMania weekend.
Did he wrestle?
He didn't wrestle at Rumble. He didn't wrestle at Chamber.
Did he wrestle at like the Saudi show? I don't remember.
No, that was after Mania.
Mania, yeah.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Huh.
He's only done the 2 Mania weekend matches and the match with Priest. And he was a referee for SummerSlam, and he got a little physical, but he hasn't like been in the ring that much this year.
And if that's because of some kind of a chronic issue, then they need to kind of act now and just be like, all right, well, Mania's most important. Take some time off in the meantime. It's not like they don't have things that aren't going to dominate the news cycle anyway in the next couple of months. Like, we're going to get this whole Bloodline Civil War thing. We're going to be building up to War Games. We've got, Crown Jewel and Bad Blood, and assuming Punk and McIntyre both stay healthy enough that they can keep that feud going and do some Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood, then that shouldn't necessarily be an issue. Like, Rollins doesn't have to be around for that. It's arguably better if he's not around for that, so that way they doesn't get in the way of that feud and end up kind of... Because I'm still assuming that it's going to be Punk and Rollins at Mania. No title on the line, but that it's going to be that. I'd rather them take Rollins out of the equation for the next few months and to have that match at Mania than to try to push it, and then push comes to shove January 10th or something. It's like, all right, you know what? He's got to go under surgery and he's not going to be ready for Mania. Now we have to figure out something else for Punk. And now Punk is fighting Sheamus or something, Then again,
I would really hope that in terms of that specific situation that you just pitched, but
I'm looking at the roster now for Monday Night Raw, just out of curiosity of like, well, then who would he end up having a match with? And I'm like, Punk against none of those people really sounds all that fun to me.
To be clear, Punk debuted at Survivor Series, or Return to Survivor Series, I should say. They didn't have anything for him outside of, hey, we're going to do this thing with Rollins because that's ready-made. And he fell into the McIntyre thing.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't really have a lot of big matches on this specific Raw side of things because they probably signed him thinking, all right, if we can get the Rollins match and the Roman match, we're kind of good. Maybe throw in some fun matches along the way with guys like Cena or Orton. But they mostly were just like, hey, let's make sure we get this Rollins match.
It's going to be CM Punk versus Odyssey Jones. That's what's going to be the big setup. Which that in and of itself is a topic to talk about, at least a little bit. Odyssey Jones finally popped up on Monday Night Raw this week. It only took him fucking 2 years to be on this thing that he got drafted twice to. One time drafted with what was it? ODDYSEY when they did the typo. Odyssey Jones gets drafted to Raw and we don't see him. And then a year goes by and he gets drafted to Raw and we don't see him for another 4 months. And now he's a member of the New Day.
Well, not yet, but
he's wearing a shirt at least.
Seems like they're going in that direction. Admittedly, it's been almost 3 years, but I personally don't like it because it makes me sad. Like, it feels like we're just moving on from Big E, and I think for good reason. I think Big E's moved on from Big E, but like, it just makes me sad in that way. I like the logic of, yeah, well, Kofi met him at the Performance Center while he was rehabbing. And I don't know where they're going with this, but cool that they actually got him on the show.
So I kind of liked that. And then at the same time, I said, well, then wait a minute. Because it was a way for them to explain why they're connected. But I kind of then thought, so for the past 2 years, Odyssey Jones has just been waiting for somebody to invite him to Raw.
Hey, he's getting extra training. The Forum Center is open to any WWE superstars. We don't have to explain that much of it. And they tried, okay?
He gets drafted and he's like, well, I mean, they're not going to call my name, so I guess I'll wait until they invite me. And then 2 years later, Kofi's there and he's like, hey, why don't you hang out on the Raw backstage? And he goes, finally. Oh, I'm going to go pick up so many people. He, of course, had a good feat of strength. So, I mean, there's potential for something to happen there with Odyssey Jones, but I did think that was kind of funny. We also got a whole setup difference with the Creed brothers, and Chad Gable now have a faction name. Chad Gable had said to Maxine Dupree, go ahead and keep the Alpha Academy name. I don't want that anymore. And referred to them as American Made, which I immediately then had the Hulk Hogan theme pop in my brain. and that's going to happen every time now that they say that. But American made, could be worse, could be better. How do you guys feel about that name?
I like the name just because I like that they're moving on. You know what I mean? I don't like that they're just losing to the Wyatts. Like, my ideal move for them would be, okay, you lost to the Wyatts. Let's get some kind of a trade deal where Randy and A-Town Down go to Raw permanently. These dudes go to SmackDown permanently. Chad Gable beats LA Knight, and he's the American-made United States champion. That's just because, all right, you lost to the Wyatts. Where do you go from here, and how do you get the audience invested again? You know, like, you lost, and there's no real room for you on that roster. Just call it a wash. Say, I wanted to be traded because I don't want to deal with these spooky Wyatts, but I do want the United States Championship.
I don't have an issue with the name. I mean, the name's pretty bland, but it's just the faction. It makes sense. They're all kind of all American type characters, so just put them together with that. And yeah, at the moment they're just on the losing end of the Wyatt 6 storyline, and seemingly going in and out of whatever's happening with Alpha Academy as well. So yeah, I can't really say that there's like too much in terms of prospects for them in the immediate future, at the very least.
I will commend their oh god, what's the word? Their that they decided not to go in this direction. I'm blanking on the word. I don't know. My brain's fried today. That they didn't have American Alpha and then Alpha Academy. That they didn't just go with American Academy. Because I was a little bit worried that they might go in that direction and just pair those extra 2 words up. But yeah, I am at this point, since they lost to the Wyatt family or the Wyatt 6. That what do you do now? I don't know. Yeah,
like and the answer's clear. Just move them. Like, for some reason, you've got a SmackDown guy fighting for the Raw World Title. The dumb. I know it's not. You're not supposed to think too hard about it, but it's dumb. The reasoning is dumb, and just move Chad Gable over to SmackDown. Keep Randy on Raw permanently. Like I said, you got the Punk match. You've got, I think Cena's probably going to end up being more of a Raw guy during his final run, so you can play with that a little bit. But this is silly. Like, and also, I don't want to be. I'm not crapping on the overall of the Wyatt 6, but so far it's kind of a bit flat for me. Like, I don't know where they go either. It's just sort of like, hey, here's Joe Gacy headlining Raw because he's attached to this thing that's loosely a tribute to this guy. Like, okay, where's the meat of the matter here? Like, what do we?
To me,
surely we're not. Yeah, I knew you were gonna go there. I tried not to say it. Where do we go from here? Like, the hook should have been Howdy.
Well, the hook's in AEW too.
Jesus, you should be trying to present Bo Dallas as a threat, because he's probably going to be carrying a lot of this stuff once it really gets cooking. For me, I don't know. Like, it feels a bit weird that we're just like, yep, Dexter Lumis and Joe Gacy, your Monday Night Raw main eventers. And I know it doesn't mean what it once did. Like, anything can main event now. I get it. This is more just me, like, ranting and rambling, but I think this could be a bit more impactful if they did something else.
I can't disagree with anything that you said. So I just echo that. Raw itself, though, other things that happen on there, all pretty self-explanatory for the most part. Like, New Day, Authors of Pain, we already mentioned that. Priest and JD McDonough and the Judgment Day split. But Randy Orton versus Gunther, as he referred to it, modern day Flair and Steamboat.
That's outlandish. Okay, look. I understand that, like, first of all, comparing anything to Flair and Steamboat at this point is probably a little old hat, just because that was almost 40 years ago. You know, we gotta kind of move forward here. But like, Randy, that's a huge thing to say when the last time you fought this guy, the entire gist of the match was you couldn't really move your back that well. And
it ends with a botched pinfall.
Right, it's a bit weird. Hopefully, him even uttering those words, he's going to really let loose and try to have the best match he's had since returning. I hate the whole, well, I'm just cashing in my rematch against you. What? You can do that for a botched finish that happened 3 months ago? What? Like, could we at least have, if we knew we were going to do this, we couldn't have given Randy like one strong win somewhere? You know, it didn't sit right with me, because it just immediately feels like, motherfucker, you didn't have anything outside of Drew, Seth, and Gunther for this world title you created over a year ago. Fucking do a fatal 4-way, and just, even if it's just a one Ilya match, just do something, create someone, do something. But I guess we're doing this Randy match, which will be fine. I don't know if it'll be great, but it'll be a good match, and we'll move on.
I would have liked them to at least have had, like, Orton says, you didn't really pin me, I deserve another chance, and somebody else could come out and be like, you lost the match, you don't deserve another match, and then they could have had a number one contenders match. Then Orton wins that one, and then we're off to the races on that. I don't know who that necessarily could have been, since everybody else is sort of booked in other capacities, but like, yeah, I don't give a shit about like some of these feuds. Move on with the Karrion Kross thing or something, for all I care.
It could have been as easy as Drew, and then Punk cost Drew another shot at the title, and you're off to the races in that regard. That. Like, it's I get it. I know what they're doing. I know where they're doing it. It's just lazy to me, and I want to move away from laziness.
Now, you're not going to that one, Callum, but as a big fan of Gunther, and not quite so much the biggest fan of in-ring work from Randy Orton, how do you think that's going to kind of play out as far as your personal level of fandom?
Well, I anticipate it's going to be a pretty by-the-numbers dull match, maybe slightly better than their match at the Saudi show, and elevated by the fact the crowd is going to be super behind Gunther, because it's basically his home country, just one country over, and Randy Orton, because Randy Orton's just super over wherever he goes now. So I imagine the crowd will help elevate this match to another level, but for the most part, I don't think it's going to be particularly awe-inspiring.
How long is the headlock, Callum?
Which one?
Well, the previous match they managed to stretch out for well over 20 minutes, so not the headlock, just the match itself, but like, I imagine if they want to try and beat that level, then they'll probably need to go at least 5-6 minutes in a headlock at some point in these matches.
I think it'll be fun. I personally don't like the setup, because honestly, it was such a random callback too, of like, hey, remember that one time in a digital exclusive, Triple H said there would be a rematch. Okay, you could, if for that matter, I would have just had Randy like RKO Gunther at SummerSlam, and make it like real clear, hey, I didn't forget about you. It felt very strange to me. But Bash in Berlin's going to be Roman's probably wrestling, so there's your hook, and everything else will fall into place.
We got a message in the chat that I'm just noticing now from Guy123. What do you think about Nick Nemeth's run in TNA? I thought that Jeff Jarrett versus Bryan was a very good brawl. Jarrett is bringing his A game. I also think Bobby Lashley should go to TNA where it'll be booked right, because on AEW they don't know how to book their big guys like Wardlow, Brian Cage, Miro, etc.
Bobby Lashley can win Meat Mayhem.
Maybe it is. Yeah.
It's important. Like,
we had talked before about the idea of Lashley going somewhere. I kind of just want him to stay in WWE, but if he goes to AEW, if he goes to TNA, I'll obviously watch him more so in AEW than TNA, since I don't watch TNA. Kind of like the idea of maybe him popping up in like a New Japan or something could be kind of fun, but that's as a guy that doesn't really watch New Japan. They don't have the best track record of booking people like that. I wouldn't want Lashley to go to AEW and win the title. So then at that point, what do you do with him? But Nemeth's run in TNA, I got nothing on that. I'm not watching it.
It's fine. It's legitimately as paint by numbers as you could imagine. It's fun. I'm glad he's world champion somewhere, I guess, but it's nothing to write about. And as far as we'll talk Double J and Brian when we talk about Dynamite.
Before we get to Dynamite, NXT also happened, and the main thing that I took away from that, more than anything else, was Wesley's turn at the end of the night. We had a couple other matches throughout NXT Great American Bash where, ultimately it wasn't really all that eventful. Kalani Jordan retained her North American title. Ethan Page retained his title. Obafemi is going to fight somebody in a kind of like open challenge next week. Joe Hendry says he wants to stick around a little bit longer. Rich Holland set up a tag title match for next week and all. Ren Sinclair is part of No Quarter Catch crew, but that's been heading in that direction anyway, so that's not a big surprise. I like the story enough. Yeah. Don't know why they continue to do as many backstage barbecue segments as they did. There was like 5 of them, and they all were basically the same segment over and over, which was, hey, let's not fight 2 people that are fighting, and then they go back and do it again and again.
Well, the most interesting thing there was some newbie who was decked out in eggplant emoji wear got shield powerbombed by, what was it, Lola Vice? I'm blanking on her name. Sol Ruca,
Jada Parker.
And Jada Parker, yeah. Like, they just shield powerbomb this guy through a picnic table. And
that guy is BJ Ray. He's from that reality show that they had done recently on Roku or something.
He honestly, that sounds exactly like a BJ. Like, he's just he's just a fucking giant douchebag. I like it. It works. He gets powerbombed through picnic table. That whole thing was a bit of fun. Wendy Chu's gonna be the next challenger for Kalani Jordan. I have no idea who's gonna fight Obafemi. That's always a good time though. Joe Hendry's thing was interesting because it was listed as a goodbye promo in the rundown. So they swerved some people there. And Oro Mensah never had a shot at winning the championship. I want to move on with this. I don't know why we're doing this.
Kill time. That's what I'm assuming. And I'm hoping that Obafemi's challenger is somebody from from outside of NXT. I don't know who. Doesn't necessarily there's not somebody from the TNA roster that I'm aware of that stands out as man, definitely so and so. Because they could do some cool stuff with people have been wanting to see Moose against him, or I don't know who's another big dude in TNA. I'm blanking on names now.
Moose would be fun. Hammerstone would be fun in terms of big dude. It'd be fun to see Eric Young for a moment back in NXT. If we're gonna go with just strictly TNA guys. But it could be somebody on the NXT roster. It could be, Dante Chen, for all we know.
Dante Chen apparently wrestled in TNA.
He was on TNA last night, yeah. It was TNA.
Because, like, the question, then I know I probably asked the question in different forms. Like, is NXT actually good? And by that I mean, by that I mean, because basically you're suggesting that they need to fly in some people from TNA in order to make the world title picture exciting. So they literally have nobody that's good enough to challenge for the world title.
Well, no, this is the North American title. So that tells you everything you need to know. NXT's fun. I don't know about good.
Yeah, NXT's hard because it's like it has a completely different feel to it than Raw and SmackDown, and it can be good in the way that they present it is different. It's not great. It's not going to be like the type of thing, especially not with your style. Like, you're not going to tune in and actually enjoy Ethan Page versus Ora Mensa. But they have character development in a way that is fun. So for somebody more like me that tends to put a little bit more focus on the characters and the stories, that can be a little bit easier to watch. But the issue with the TNA thing, and why I always keep suggesting to bring them in, I just like the variety. And I'd rather have somebody from TNA pop up and get the crowd to be all invested and to see somebody a little bit different than for it to be like Obafemi puts out a open challenge and he's up against somebody like a Cedric Alexander, who I know that they're going to lose. And I know that the TNA guy is going to lose too, if that would be the case. But at least then it might be somebody that I'm not as familiar with, or it might be somebody that I get to see something a little bit different from. And I don't know how long the partnership's going to stay. So I'd rather keep those other people for whenever that partnership ends, so that that we're not seeing that again in the future. Like, maximize the amount of TNA exposure we can get. Unless it's somebody that's fucking god awful, then I don't want to. But then again, it's, the amount of attention that I can pay for certain things. If it's Obafemi versus Dion Lennox, who got like a big shout out this week, and I don't necessarily I'm not enjoying it, then I can just continue to wash dishes because I'm usually eating dinner around the time of NXT, or like, write up an article about something else in the meantime. So it's hit or miss, but I would be way more interested in Obafemi against somebody from TNA than for them to take one of these NXT level up enhancement talents and have him just get squashed. If they end up being like Obafemi against Eddie Thorpe, I don't care.
Eddie Thorpe is fighting Lexus King again.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't care. I'm past caring about the future of Lexus King at this point, since they've done so much to tell me that I shouldn't be invested. And I have never been sold on Eddie Thorpe. And they certainly are not doing anything to change my mind with this DJ story with Lexus King. So that's like, hey, do you want to see them against each other? And it's like, I didn't want to see them the first time. Let alone a rematch. But at least with Wes Lee and his heel turn at the end of this, going after the other members of the Rascals, that's a TNA crossover that probably will play out a little bit more on TNA programming than it does on NXT, but that was kind of fun.
Yeah, what I liked about this was it was a genuine shock for me.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming at all.
I didn't see coming. When everybody was crying, I thought maybe they were going to attack him for a moment. Because, Trinigal being the one that didn't go to NXT in the first place, I thought he might do something. But seeing Wesley just sort of lash out and be like, you know what? Screw you guys. You left me alone. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the surprise.
The idea of a heel Wesley is something that I haven't really thought too much about before. And was he a heel at any point in TNA?
No, not really.
So that might be kind of fun to see something different on that end.
I'm mostly interested in when are they going to, like, where will the blow off be? Because they'll probably have matches back and forth in TNA and NXT. But like, what is the once this is done? What's the end game? Because NXT is very heel heavy right now, and they kind of needed the strong baby face that Lee was. So I'll be interested to see where the landscape is by the time he's ready to move on from feuding with the Rascals.
Moving on there to the Dynamite episode and kind of rounding us out for this episode of the Hot Tags, at least as far as I'm aware of. Anything else to talk about? Oh, I guess we could talk about the G1 stuff. Do you want to talk about the G1 before we move over to Dynamite, Callum?
Yeah, I can give a bit of an update on that regard. So there's only one match left in the A block, or at least from the first stage, before you get into the semi-finals, then the final, and then the main final between A and B block. But we know certain things. So Zack Sabre Jr. is at the top with 12 points, so he's fully safe in the at the top spot. I think he pretty much has got top spot pretty much guaranteed at this point, because the two guys that are beneath him, he's beat both of them. So he's so he'll have the tiebreaker over both of them. So he's going to get the final match in the A block to try and get through. Then behind him you have Evil and Tetsuya Naito both on 10 points. And then further back you have Sonada, Shingo Takagi, Great O'Khan and Jake Lee all on 8 points. Gabe Kidd, Shota Umino and Callum Newman are all mathematically eliminated. So Shota Umino really flattering to deceive this time around. And also, based on what I've heard from reliable sources, both Sonada and Jake Lee are pretty much 100% eliminated as well, because tiebreakers won't really work out well for them. So the other two people that will go through alongside that are going to be one or two of Evil, Tetsuya Naito, Shingo Takagi, and Great O'Khan. If I was a betting man, I'd probably go Takagi and Naito as the two that will go through. And then in B block, there's still just a lot to still be determined, but at the moment you've got Jeff Cobb at the top with 10 points, then David Finlay with 8 points, then alongside Takeshita, Narita, Hiroki Goto and Yota Tsuji all on 8 points. Hanare, Yumura, Oleg Boltin and El Phantasmo are pretty much out now, all on 6 and 4 points, so it's going to be 3 from 6, it seems like, in the B block. Their next show is taking place on tomorrow, so by the time some people are listening to this, it'll be happening on that. It'll be going on at that point, and then we'll have a bit of a clearer idea about who's likely to advance from the B block. But yeah, so that's pretty much where it is right now. Still, at the moment, it feels like Zach is probably the favourite, I'd say.
Which goes back to your original prediction, I believe, right?
Well, it was a hopeful one of Zach Soju, because I just didn't think they'd give it to, a non-Japanese guy so soon. Well, whereas only really Kenny Omega is the only real kind of non-Japanese guy to have really win the G1. But Seth Rollins Jr. has been with New Japan for a very, very long time. So he's pretty much ingratiated into the landscape now. So I don't think it'll be too weird to see him get the victory.
And he doesn't want to leave either. He's the guy you need to put it on, because he's not interested in leaving. He just wants to support New Japan.
Yeah. I'd say probably the most other interesting thing about the G1 story this year is that the young guys have all kind of not really impressed mostly at all, outside of the quote young guy of this groups that have impressed the most is probably Gated, which is interesting because, again, non-Japanese guy, but he's probably had the most entertaining matches out of all of them. Umino's been pretty horrible. Not I say horrible, I mean, he's just hasn't stood out at all. He's lost a lot of the charisma that he had last year, and the connection that he had with the audience is all pretty much dissipated. He just looks out of shape and out of just ideas in terms of what his character is and who he stands for now. Yota Tsuji's been fine, but not spectacular. Ren Narita's been terrible, but his gimmick is terrible. Yuta Uemura started off really good and has now just kind of faded into the background, and to the point where he's pretty much eliminated now. So yeah, it's not been, they've kind of just defaulted at a time where they really need to start making new stars, New Japan have defaulted back to the same old guys that are at the top, as they almost always has been for the last year or so, to the point where Hiroki Goto is probably the most exciting part of the G1 right now, because he's an old guy that's pushing himself towards the top of the G1 again.
Somebody should do a calculation of, if you take New Japan, TNA, WWE, and AEW, and you calculate the average age of different people in, like, towards the top, different people, like, in general, and just see what the average age of the modern day wrestler is, and how their success levels are.
Do I not? I feel like I push it the hardest on this podcast between the three of us. That's one of my favorite things about NXT. Callum, you ask if NXT is good. At least I know that they're just, like, genuinely, they're young enough that if they really want to be, they can stick around for a while. You know what I mean? Like,
that's that. I mean, I think I was mentioning that, like, I don't know if it was last week or another point in time, but the thing that NXT does super successfully, and the reason why I think it's grown in popularity in the last year or so, is because they just push young people, and fans want to see young people doing well. Well, young fans in particular want to see young wrestlers. Is the biggest problem with AEW, I'd say, out of everything, is the fact that they just continue to regurgitate the same people at the top of the card, whereas people like, who at the start of AEW, like Private Party and you'd argue like Sammy Guevara and stuff like that at the start, which say like, oh, these are the future of the promotion. It's 5 years later, and they're just all in the same kind of place they were at the start of AEW. That's the biggest issue.
No, you're 100% correct. And for me, like, you know, I'm glad LA Knight's got a belt, right? I'm glad that Priest has really leveled up. That's one thing we didn't talk about from Raw. Priest had a really impactful promo. The crowd's behind him. Everything's working there. But it's still like, you know, just because I'm glad that we're not ageist in the sense of, hey, you know, a mid-30s guy can still get a shot, like a Joe Hendry. A guy in his 40s, like Priest, can still get his shot. But at the end of the day, Father Time is still Father Time, and, like, that might not work out so well for you in the long run. Like, you gotta really make a go on these younger dudes that can be around as long as Cena was for you, as long as Randy's been for you. And that is something I think that all of wrestling is really hurting right now. Like, I think in AEW, Christian's having, like, the best run of his career, right? But it's still like, damn, it's still Christian, you know? Like, I don't know. It's just something I think about a lot these days when watching wrestling. Like, I want more youthful stars.
I see we got some stuff in the chat here of Bella saying live hot tags. Wish I jumped on sooner. Hope this is common. I'll contribute. If you guys enjoy live hot tags, then we'll try to make it more common. You let us know. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to contribute, absolutely.
Even more so than
like,
yeah. That's the great motivator of all things. And Guy123 is saying, all right, well, we'll talk about the Mercedes thing. So let's talk about AEW and round out our hot tags here. Dynamite, I'm going to check actually Rob's coverage on Fightful. MJF and Kyle Fletcher starting off. That's right. We had the
good match there. You know, good match there. Kyle Fletcher, I think, leveled up. Again, young guy. Let's go all in on Kyle Fletcher. I hate this MJF Americana thing. It's not working well for me, but they did the thing with the screwdriver where Kyle Fletcher, like Will Ospreay, also refused to use it. Worked out to his detriment because he got punched in the balls, and MJF beat him. MJF busted him open with the ring, and Will Ospreay cradled Kyle Fletcher as though it was like, I'll never let you go, Jack, kind of moment. I thought that was a bit too hammy for me. What'd you think, Callum?
I thought the match was excellent. I'm actually one of probably the few people that likes the MJF gimmick, because it's an all-American gimmick where the American is the bad guy. And I think it's about time we saw more gimmicks like that. And I think that, as I say, it was probably a bit too melodramatic. I wasn't super big fan of the finish, because I don't see why Kyle Fletcher would hesitate to use the screwdriver. he might hesitate for a second, but I feel like he should have tried to use the screwdriver, and MJF then hits a low blow, because he's not a babyface right now. He's acting like a babyface because he's supporting Will, but I think that the long-term run for him is to be as a heel and also to be feuding with Ospreay at some point. But the match itself was very good, and as Carl Fletcher is someone they should be looking to elevate in the next year or so, like actually, properly elevate to the next level.
I'm imagining that at some point in 2025, Kyle Fletcher is winning the TNT or Continental title or something like that.
You'd hope so, but I'm still kind of imagining that he's just going to be running around with Don Callis' family at some point. At that point. That's kind of the fear that I have.
Some other talking points from this. The matches themselves, again, like most of the matches on like Raw and SmackDown, like they're matches. I don't think we really need to do a deep dive on Camille squashing two people. But the promo after.
Well, if we're going to go in chronological order, just real quick. Mariah May did beat Viva Van. Toni Storm, she gifted her like a photo of them embracing when Mariah was announced for the Owen. And then Toni Storm beat her up and tried to attack her with the shoe. They keep going back to the shoe. I have to imagine that is playing into the finish of this match in Wembley. But I've enjoyed everything these women have done so far.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty bloody brawl, I imagine, at Wembley.
Are you going to be watching out for the show?
I'm going to be pretty far away from it.
You never know.
That's good. It seems to bust people open. So stay from the shoe.
Yeah. Like Shibata beating Brian Keith, and then you just had Hook make his return. So obviously you're getting Hook versus Jericho for the FTW title, which again is another indication of Hook fought for the FTW last year. Next year, just that same thing, just fighting for the FTW title. Like actually push some people. I don't say you have to push all the young people, but you have to choose like 5 or 6 of them and say, yeah, we're actually going to push you, and you're actually going to be in a different, higher position next year than you are right now.
Retire this belt, please.
That kind of becomes the issue that I always had when it comes to weight classes in pro wrestling. Because if it's like, okay, Hook, we're going to keep using Hook, but he can only win the FTW title, then it's just that every year. He never does anything else. And by the way, good use of the word skedaddling in your your coverage, Rob.
Thank you.
It's not a word that pops up all that often.
I did use the word skedaddling. Thank you.
Yeah, like the Hook in the same position. We do have some new people that are in the mix. Like we didn't have, Swerve wasn't in the main event and such, but I wouldn't be opposed to seeing WWE, AEW, whatever it is, like switch up the formula a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you had there was a lot of travel issues for AEW this week in terms of like certain people not getting to it, and they kind of used that to their advantage in this one, where having Orange Cassidy not having any other members of the conglomeration around, so he teamed with FTR to defeat Beast Mortos, Roosh, and Roderick Strong. And then there seems to be they're building up to a acclaimed FTR feud, which is interesting because the Acclaimed are fighting the Young Bucks at All In, but they're seemingly
you got to do that.
Going to throw it. Well, I think they're going to throw FT in the mix. I think they're going to make it a triple threat tag match.
Wait, did they confirm Acclaimed Bucks?
I don't know if that is like absolutely confirmed, but like you imagine they have to do that. But it's not on the card right now. But you have to imagine they've got to have that title match at some point, and why wouldn't they be All In?
As far as I'm aware, they haven't made that official for the pay-per-view.
We're actually going to talk about that for another championship that I'm pretty surprised about in a moment here, because they announced that next week Claudio and Okada go face-to-face.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that mean you're doing Claudio Okada at Wembley? Don't get me wrong, great match. Bell to bell could be the best match. But Claudio, I don't get the sense that he's going to defeat Kazuchika Okada. And considering that we have talked on this podcast before about Hangman Okada potentially being the move, I think that would have been a lot more intriguing than what they're probably going to do with Hangman.
Casino Gauntlet.
No, Hangman. Well, he could be. I think Hangman's fighting Jeff Jarrett at All In.
Yeah, Yeah. Needs it.
But he could Casino Gauntlet.
He could.
That'd be good. It'd be a good way to get in that title match. Yeah. But I think that I'm not super upset about the idea of Okada versus Claudio being the match, mainly because I think that Okada shouldn't be losing until the Continental Classic at the very earliest, and that'd be like in the finals of the Continental Classic as well. I think he should just like sweep everyone in his group, win the semi-final match, and then lose in the final to, I mean, whoever the choice would be. Like, I'd say I would go Takeshita. But again, that's fully dependent on if Takeshita even comes back to AEW after how well he's been received in New Japan. But yeah, I'm totally cool with the idea of Hangman just destroying Jeff Jarrett, or having like Jeff Jarrett's one last kind of rodeo of having the match with Hangman and like getting a big moment in Wembley Stadium. So
I would be cool with that. They didn't do that in the Owen. Like, Hangman fucked him up in the Owen.
Well, yeah, I'm totally fine with like a rematch being the case. It being like I don't say like a Texas Death match, but it can be like a more kind of no DQ brawl thing. Like, we'll talk about it in a little while, but like the Jarrett Danielson match when they were just fighting all over the arena was really, really good. And you kind of need that sort of match with Jarrett, because Jarrett can't, at his age, doesn't do bell to bell as like traditional bell to bell as well as he used to. So I think you can do that with Hangman, just to go with that more aggressive thing. It's like I guess the equivalent in my mind is the Jericho Ricky Steamboat stuff, where he beat Ricky Steamboat and two other legends in a handicap match, and then he fought Ricky Steamboat the month after at Backlash. So you can tell that story, and the crowd would be super invested in it, because they like what Jarrett's doing right now, and obviously they're super invested in Hangman. And
so what you're saying, the Steamboat's going to wrestle?
Well, Steamboat was on the show, so
right? That's what I mean. It's going to be Hangman versus Steamboat. Yep.
I'm also waiting for one match that I'm hoping will happen at All In, just based on something that happened on this show as well, because they did a hologram vignette, and I've been super impressed with hologram. I think that's like, obviously both his matches so far have taken place on Collision, so Tony wouldn't have seen any of them. But I
haven't seen hologram yet. I've seen like video package stuff for hologram, and it seems kind of cool, but I haven't seen the matches.
I mean, both the matches that he had with Gringo Loco and the Beast Mortos have both been like awesome, and I'm hoping that he'll have a match at All In against Ricochet.
Down for that.
Oh, that's fine.
You got to get Pac somewhere in there too, though.
Yeah, Pac needs to do something, but I'm thinking he's going to be in the
Gauntlet.
The Gauntlet. I think he might win the Gauntlet.
Did they say when the Gauntlet guy gets the title shot?
No,
it just says future World Championship opportunity, because we know Darby Allin's getting the match at
right, because Darby gets Grand Slam, so maybe
Grand
that's
Slam, yeah.
Wrestle Dream. Interesting.
Or it could just be on Dynamite.
That's true too.
Or it could be the main event. Or it could be the main event of All Out.
Oh,
yeah, it could be All Out too.
Yeah, you're right. Damn. Actually, that's probably something to keep an eye on.
But yeah, now we'll talk about the Camille and Mercedes Moné thing. So, Camille just beats two jobbers, and then Mercedes Moné cuts a promo, which seemingly a lot of people don't like. I'm kind of like, it's a promo.
Yeah, I can't remember anything.
I was bored out of my mind with that promo.
I can't remember anything egregious, but it's just like, this is par for the course at this point, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that's what one of the bad things about it is. I haven't been seeing anything good from her for a long while, and I don't think that's just AEW either, for that matter. I think she was kind of phoning it in for a while in WWE too.
I'd say like her promos have never been the strong suit with her, and she does just rely on a lot of like scripted cadence, and her things are just heavily scripted, and they're quite like beat driven. Like, you can just go from one thing to the next, and it doesn't feel authentic. So you have to rely a lot on the in-ring stuff, and her in-ring stuff has still been as good as
it's still great.
It usually is. But yeah, she's not adding a lot of investment into the feud with Britt Baker, and to be fair, Britt wasn't adding too much into it. It doesn't help by the fact that if you're suspended for 2 weeks, that kind of throws it off a little bit as well. But her just appearing via satellite and making like insider references about taking the ball and go home, it's like, well, yeah, like the hardcores know what you're talking about, but you need to, nobody. Let's put it this way: if someone has only ever watched AEW, they have absolutely no idea what you're referring to.
It's kind of like when Punk can't help himself and brings up an AEW thing on WWE TV, and maybe 10% of the audience gets it. The rest are just like, "What is he saying?"
And AEW has a more insider audience than WWE's one does, but it's still like there's still only a certain percentage of the audience. The rest of them are just case of, well, we've never seen Mercedes like take her ball and go home. What are you referring to there? It's like it's something that happened, 5 years ago in WWE.
Right, because even her walking out, which could be lumped into that, most people at this point see that as like, no, she's fucking right. Like, she stood up for herself. The taking the ball, go home thing was more of the WrestleMania 35 crying on the floor kind of deal.
And then just the main event was a great match, and Jarrett coming out immediately and swinging guitar at the back of Danielson, and then just them brawling over ringside, and in the crowds and all that stuff. And yeah, it was just like a nice fun match between. And fundamentally, like one of the guys it's amazing that Danielson out of the two of them is the one that's closer to retirement.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So. But that it's just a fun time, and they had they showed online on Twitter there was footage from after the show, and Jarrett was getting beaten up by Hangman, and so was he was also taking out Sonjay and Jay Lethal as well. And then in flew in Mariah May and Tony Storm also brawling as well. So yeah, they're adding a lot of kind of very hatred driven feuds going into All In. To be fair, the one that probably has the least kind of hatred put into it is the main event match, but it doesn't need that hatred really, because it's Swerve versus Danielson and it's title versus career, so you don't really need to have that animosity between the two of them going into it. But yeah, I'd say it overall pretty good show. It built up match they needed to for the show. I'm hoping that they announce a bit more. I'd say I'm super excited for the show, knowing what I already know is going to happen, but I think we should have the full card pretty much set by next week at the latest, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm assuming that
there's 2 more episodes, right?
Like Claudio and Okada, which Kazuchika has how many eyes, Rob?
Yeah, it's got 1. My keyboard does not work properly, and I just fixed it because I'm reading it along with you.
Kazuchika.
Yeah, that's basically the way that I spelled it. Like
you're doing the announcements.
But yeah, when I say like the full card announcement, I mean like the full main card, because we know they'll throw in like 2 or 3 matches on the 0 hour that we didn't know like 10 minutes before the show started. So,
alrighty, well, I think that might do us for the hot tags. Of course, if we did forget some stuff, drop them in the comments below. We'll wrap them into next week, and I don't know what we're going to be doing next week. No main event for this week. We didn't really have anything planned, and I didn't necessarily feel up for it. And the next week's plan is kind of blank too. Probably get around to doing some kind of a dark cast next week, whether or not we do have a main event. And if if you have any ideas what you'd like, let us know. Hot tags and stuff. We'll, talk about some other kind of topics, whatever happens in the next few days. Maybe something cool happens on SmackDown tonight. I'm assuming Roman gets his necklace back based off of WrestleVotes, or whatever the other account was that was putting something out there. Point being, thank you for listening to episode 662 of the Hot Tags. If you want to tell us your thoughts about stuff, drop them in the comments below. Make sure that you are supporting us in all the different ways mentioned before. Make sure that you're also going to the link tree on amangotree.com and liking and sharing and favoriting and following all those different things that you see there. Support Fanboys Anonymous, support Smark Out Moment. You support one thing under a mango tree, it helps the other one out too. If you follow me all over the place at Tony Mango, that's greatly appreciated on top of that. And also make sure that you're following Rob and Callum.
Yep, you can follow me everywhere at Dude Fleece, and you can check out my work on Fightful.com and check out all the other great stuff on Fightful, including lots of interviews from SummerSlam weekend.
Yep, you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmaster14. Check out the power rankings over on smarkmo.com every Saturday, where I rank the WWE superstars. This will be based largely on what took place at SummerSlam, so check that out to see where everyone's following that show. And then you can also check out the Fantasy League over on Smark at the moment, or at www.fantasyleague.com to see how our teams have. I probably should do a bit of somewhat of a recap about stuff.
Yeah.
Because Rob hasn't actually.
I
told Rob about like several days ago about making the trades to his team or eliminations to his team.
It's gonna happen live right now, baby. Gonna do it live.
So what has happened? So Tony won the prediction contest, as he said on the SummerSlam show. So he got to have like first bags at a lot of things. So what he has done in the meantime is that he traded LA Knight from my team to his team, because he got that ability because he won his third prediction contest. So that's a special power that he got out of that. He eliminated both Javon Evans and Bronson Reed, I believe, from your team. So that doesn't seem as smart now to get rid of Bronson after that point.
No, that don't matter.
And then took on board. I think you traded the LA Knight for Austin Fury, and then the other trade that you made was
I picked up Roman.
You picked up Roman, yeah. So you picked up Roman for trying to remember who it doesn't matter who the previous one was, but you got Roman Reigns on your team.
Miz,
now,
I think.
Which is the smart thing to do. So your team's been updated a little bit, still persisting with Tula Tonga, even though he's still yet to make an appearance.
That's amazing. I'm like, what are you waiting for, Tony?
But you have pretty much every member of the new bloodline in your crew, and the head of the old bloodline there as well. I've made a couple of changes, so I've eliminated Braun Strowman and Ludwig Kaiser from my teams because they just been losing points consistently, and I don't even know what's happening with Braun Strowman.
Nothing.
I have Austin Theory now on my team because of that trade, but I'd like to keep him around at least for a little while because I imagine he's going to have a babyface turn at some point. I don't know how much he's going to lose before that, but he will eventually turn babyface. And then I brought Nathan Fraser on board, which is good because he defended his tag team title successfully on NXT. But yes, I got him.
That spirit. Oh god,
I was going to say, brought him on board. I think I got rid of. I can't remember off the top of my head who I dropped for that one, but that's how my team's looking. I think I'm still at the moment ahead, but it's close between me and Rob. Still, Tony still needs to catch up a bit.
And in that spirit, I'll be getting rid of Chelsea Green and Grayson Waller, and I will be trading Logan Paul. Gonna assume that he's not going to be around for a moment, and I will pick up in his place Axiom.
You can make one more trade if you want to.
We don't. Do we still get appearance points?
Yeah, but it has to be a wrestler. You can't take like Samantha Irving or something like that.
I can't take like Mr. Stone.
I mean, he doesn't really wrestle that much, so I'd probably advise against it.
You can pick Stevie Turner.
Yeah, they're both in person right now. Looking at who I've got, I don't think I'm going to make another trade.
That's fine. I mean, so you can make another trade in time between now and Bash and Berlin anyway, so...
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
So there's some live updates to the Fantasy League teams. As I say, I'll be updating some points for this week, probably on Saturday as well. So they're not the most up-to-date amount of points, but you can see how many points people got from SummerSlam. Like Gunter obviously did great numbers for Rob. Bron Breakker did really well for Tony. My best points getter from SummerSlam was Nia Jax. So some decent points hauls for every person. And just follow that along to see who will end up on top by the time we reach Bash at Berlin.
Okie dokie, everybody, you know the score. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button and stay tuned, and we will see you next time. This has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.